Hi there everyone, it's Russell. Welcome to the Reading Fabricator. I hope you're doing well, hope you're reading lots of books, and it has been a long time since I posted a video, but I promised I'd get around to it, and I did it. I'm currently almost at the end of Cormac McCarthy's The Crossing. The interesting thing about this book here, though, is unlike all these other books, which are almost entirely compressed, what I found with The Crossing was, technically it's like a novella and then a novel put together as one decent sized book. I mean, it's one of Cormac's longest books, probably his second longest book after Suttree. And I honestly cannot remember anything from the latter 2/3 of The Crossing, but I can always remember the opening 140, 130 pages of it, which is basically in itself a compressed novella detailing the boy Billy Parham, 16 years old, and his affiliations with a she-wolf that he captures in New Mexico and proceeds to take back to Mexico across the border. And all those previous rereadings, I've reread the novella part of the book 3 times. Each time I've reread it, I've gained a little bit more out of it. But I can never remember the latter part of the book, which has been a real shame. In fact, to my knowledge, I don't think I've ever actually gotten that far. I think I've only ever read that first portion and then just put the book aside. I think mostly because I read that part before I read All the Pretty Horses. But coming back to rereading this section of The Crossing and then reading the rest of the book for the first time ever for the rest of that part of the book, I was immediately struck with the language of it. And I know I sound like a broken record saying that, but with all the rereadings of McCarthy that I've done, I've found that my appreciation for the book has gotten more intense with regards to, the language, the way he can put together a canvas of the landscape, his descriptions, the dialogue in the book, which is almost incomparable to most other books out there. This theme of life and death. Life and death is always a major theme in his work, if not the top theme in his work, alongside the smaller aspects such as like science and theology and philosophy. I'm currently a third of the way through the book. I will plan to finish it, but here's what I'll say. What I found with The Crossing, as opposed to All the Pretty Horses, when I'm reading All the Pretty Horses, I look at the main characters. I think John Grady Cole is the main character. I can't remember who the other two were. But even for the first third of that book, you see that you read the details of them traversing across the border. And it almost has like this adventurous romanticism to it. It's such an adventurous book, probably the most adventurous and free-spirited thing that McCarthy has conjured. And it ends, at least I think, personally, there's no spoiler, but I think that All the Pretty Horses ends on a note of optimism. I think you're seeing basically a coming-of-age story for John, where he can forge his own path and success in the future. And I know some people would look into those final pages of the book as sort of a pessimistic view, but I personally view All the Pretty Horses, despite some of the trials and tribulations that he goes through, to be almost like a coming-of-age piece of optimism, where he learns and he grows up, and through these learnings he's able to go forth and put together a new life for himself. This is the complete opposite in this book here. Even based on this first third that I've read, I don't see any optimism here at all. I do not see a good ending for Billy at all. 16 years old. I mean, technically this could be a coming-of-age book, but it's coming of age, and it's also, I say, a tragedy. There's this impending air of doom that's seething through the pages, even from the very start of the book, when him and his younger brother Boyd go out and they come across this Native American who is very ominous and very unsettling, and they're not quite sure what to do with it. And just from those opening pages all the way through these first 130, 140 pages, I do not get the sense that Billy is going to live a decent and optimistic life. I see tragedy in it on almost every page. There's not much hope, and even with how well the landscapes are written in this book, in the portion that I've read, it's almost a complete flip of All the Pretty Horses. All the Pretty Horses, I'm entranced with the landscapes and all that. This one here seems desolate, and it seems mean-spirited, despite some of the characters that he meets along the way with the she-wolf, some of whom are positive towards him and some of whom are downright negative. I also see this as more like a picaresque novel, where it's just this journey with various events that are happening. But more than anything, I just see it as a complete antithesis to All the Pretty Horses. I really do. There's something evil at work going on in this book here. A much darker piece of thematic that is happening. The story of Billy Parham and his younger brother Boyd and his family living on like a small, almost decrepit like ranch in New Mexico. The first 50 pages detail their attempts at catching this she-wolf that is decimating the cattle and the livestock in the surrounding areas. They keep laying out traps, and this wolf is quite intelligent. It's always finding ways to spring the traps without getting caught. And there's one passage in here that completely threw me off guard. There's about 30 or so pages in the book where it flips. The first X amount of pages are told from the Billy's point of view, but then out of nowhere we get a sort of like a first-person narrative told from the point of view of the wolf, which I thought was actually quite stunning. I really liked that. That really threw me off guard. I quite enjoyed that little trajectory change that was going on there. When Billy finally catches the wolf, he is told by his father that if the wolf is seriously injured, to shoot it right there on the spot, or to bring it back to him, and I assume they're going to kill it anyway and sell the pelt for money. He decides differently. There's this wonderful sequence where he's detailing how he proceeds to release the wolf from the trap and keep it from attacking him. Very, very meticulously written. It's almost as if Cormac has done this himself. And while he's proceeding to navigate with his horse and the wolf tied behind him back, he stops, thinks, and looks towards the mountains and decides that he's just going to go to Mexico and release the wolf into the wild. He doesn't go back to see his family ever. He never sees his father again. And I'm going to go into sort of a bit of spoiler territory here, although it's not spoiler for the book itself, because technically it's only the first 150 pages. It's more like the setup, really, if anything. But through these adventures that he has with this wolf, you meet a whole host of interesting side characters. As I said before, some are of positive nature and some are of negative nature, including when he proceeds to go through the crossing. You know, he goes through a gate and these dogs are just coming and are about to attack him, and he meets this lovely family who eventually help him. And then you come across this woman and this, I think, 14-year-old girl who's pregnant and smoking, and they talk about the wolf and how the wolf is almost at the time of giving birth, because I think it's heavily implied that the wolf is pregnant. Just these interesting characters all along the way. And as he proceeds further into Mexico, the characters get more and more intense and antagonistic. Just various sections like that. Of course, being a McCarthy novel, you get portions throughout talking about dreams. I mean, when I think of Cormac McCarthy as a writer, I don't think of a novel in particular. I just think of dreams, the way he writes dreams. Some of which are, in fact, all of which I think are actually quite evil and antagonistic in nature, including one where his younger brother Boyd, and this is before he catches the wolf, they're up at night, listening to the coyotes howl in the distance, and he talks to Billy about this dream he had of seeing people on a lake bed on fire, burning. Just pure horror to think about. Another one, I think it was Billy who had the dream, where he sees this figure coming up to him, almost like he describes it as a messenger. He never sees the face, and I see this as a bit of foreshadowing, because when him and the horse and the wolf cross this perilous river, which is quite a good set piece actually. I don't like talking about set pieces, because set pieces can be referred to as movies, but I like to refer to set pieces in books as well. And it's a set piece where he's trying to get the horse across the river, but he's also having to go back to save the wolf as well, because the wolf is struggling because it's got an injured leg from the trap that they set. And when they cross the river, they come across these two. I think they're basically lawmen for Mexico, who proceed to arrest him. And one of the lawmen, it's described in the book as how he's not able to see the lawman's face. It's almost shadow and covered, which to me is a payoff for that dream that Billy had, where he saw a messenger coming but wasn't able to see the face. At least that's how I interpreted it. And throughout this adventure of bringing the wolf into Mexico, again, it's wonderfully descriptive, but there's no hope there, none at all. There's only one bit of decency in the book, and that is seeing the wolf and Billy sort of not so much come to terms with each other, but more get to the point of just having to live with each other in such a way as to be able to not be afraid of one another. At the start, he's sort of anxious with the she-wolf. He's worried that the wolf will pretty much eat him up, and there's various conversations he has with a number of side characters where they talk about how if that wolf gets out of that muzzle, it will chew you up with nothing left. That's constantly recurring conversation that he has with people. But it gets to the point where on the fourth or fifth night, he's sitting by the campfire, and the wolf, who was initially scared of the fire, is just sitting alongside him, There's wonderful moments, sparsely sporadic throughout, where he's detailing how he feeds the wolf using a spatula to get through the muzzle, how he's using a canteen of water to feed it. So you can see that he starts to actually care for this wolf more and more as the story goes on, and it ends in quite an emotional way. In my mind, probably one of the most emotional sections of the book that I've ever come across. Again, this will be spoiler territory if you have not read it. But after those lawmen basically arrest him, and I think it's due to the fact that he doesn't have a passport and he doesn't have a permit or anything like that. He's sort of just wandered into Mexico. They take the wolf from him, and they proceed to lead this congregation out of the town to this place where they basically set the wolf up to be used in dogfights. And Billy is trying really hard to get the wolf back. In fact, there's multiple points in that last third of the novella portion of the book where he talks about how the wolf has been entrusted into his care, and he sees to see this wolf freed and allowed to live. This section of the book is absolutely marvelous. They're having this, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a pit. You've got the wolf chained up here, and the handlers bring in 2 dogs at a time over the course of many hours to attack this wolf. People all in the stands, chanting, howling, yelling, cheering, putting wagers on. And Billy is struggling to comprehend this. You see him just losing his innocence bit by bit as this is happening. And you see it throughout the whole novella. It's a coming of age story, but it's also a complete loss of innocence. You can see the humanity sort of starting to a little bit drain from him. At least that's how I interpreted it. And what you get here is this description of him walking into the pit as the dogs are fighting. And he proceeds to pick up each dog and take it back to its handler. Sort of picks up on his heart, so it's walking on his hind legs and pull it back to his handler. But the way it's written, I conjured it as sort of like watching a spirit enter. Because what ends up happening is the crowd immediately shuts up. The handlers are just standing there, don't know what to do. Everyone is just unsure of what's going on. But you see Billy just not running, not chasing after him to stop the fight, but just walking into the pit calmly to stop this wolf being attacked, to stop the wolf from attacking as well. And he doesn't succeed. He's pretty much asked to leave, but he comes back later in the night, walks into the barn where the wolf, he sees the wolf, yellow eyes covered in blood and dirt, takes this rifle that he's had with him most of the time, and proceeds to kill the wolf on the spot. He failed in his journey of taking this wolf into the wild and releasing it. And that is the point in this book here, the novella, the third of the way through the book, where I can see the complete loss of innocence in this 16-year-old boy. Yes, I can see this as a coming of age story. I can see this as a picaresque novel. But man, this is doom laden. There is so much tragedy I see here, and I'm only predicting that it's going to get even worse as the book progresses. Again, a complete antithesis to how I read All the Pretty Horses. When the first time I read All the Pretty Horses, I liked it. I love it a lot more the second time around. But this is a whole other beast entirely. I think this is a deeper, more resonant novel, and it's slowly making its way to probably being in my top 3 or 4 favorite Cormac McCarthy's novels, and that's just based on the first third alone. I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of it. The language is pure. The descriptions are wonderful. It's there's desolation everywhere, and I find Billy Parham to be a far more entrancing character than John Grady Cole. John Grady Cole, to my mind, was the embodiment of adventure and romanticism and exploration. Billy Parham, this is a kid who I see no hope for in the future. I hope I'm wrong, but that is the point, the direction that I'm heading in with this character with regards to the first third of this book. I'm not sure how the last 2/3 are going to go, but I'm really, really interested, and I will finish this book pretty damn quickly. I've got a couple of passages highlighted here, including one being a dream sequence, because I always like the dream sequences in Cormac McCarthy books. I thought this one was quite interesting. He slept, and as he slept, he dreamt, and the dream was of his father. And in the dream, his father was afoot and lost in the desert. In the dying light of that day, he could see his father's eyes. His father stood looking toward the west, where the sun had gone and where the wind was rising out of the darkness. The small sands in that waste was all there was for the wind to move, and it moved with a constant migratory seething upon itself, as if in its ultimate granulation the world sought some stay against its own eternal wheeling. His father's eyes searched the coming of the night in the deepening redness beyond the rim of the world, and those eyes seemed to contemplate with a terrible equanimity the cold and the dark and the silence that moved upon him, and then all was dark and all was swallowed up, and in the silence he heard somewhere a solitary bell that tolled and ceased, and then he woke. Wonderful, wonderful writing there. Yeah, as I said before, when it comes to dream sequences, Cormac McCarthy is, there's no one that compares to him. He's absolutely astonishing. The final section, this is the final portion, the final page of the novella portion of The Crossing. It really hit me emotionally. I think it's a wonderful section. And it's after he shot the wolf, he wraps it up and takes it to the mountains that he initially wanted to release it in. But instead of releasing it, he's going to bury the wolf. Very, very emotional. Yeah, it's wonderful stuff. I'm going to give it a read here. He squatted over the wolf and touched her fur. He touched the cold and perfect teeth. The eye turned to the fire, gave back no light, and he closed it with his thumb and sat by her and put his hand upon her bloodied forehead and closed his own eyes that he could see her running in the mountains, running in the starlight where the grass was wet and the sun's coming as yet had not undone the rich matrix of creatures past in the night before her. Deer and hare and dove and ground vole, all richly empanelled on the air for her delight, all nations of the possible world ordained by God, of which she was among and not separate form. Where she ran, the cries of the coyotes clapped shut as if a door had closed upon them, and all was fear and marvel. He took up her stiff head, and out of the leaves held it, or he reached to hold what he cannot be held. What already ran among the mountains at once terrible and of a great beauty, like flowers that feed on flesh. What blood and bone are made of, but can themselves not make on any altar, nor by any wound of war. What we may well believe has power to cut and shape and hollow out the dark form of the world, surely if rain can, but which cannot be held, never be held, and is no flower, but is swift and a huntress, and the wind itself is in terror of it, and the world cannot lose it. I mean, honestly, I know it fits together as a complete form, but he could have easily released this as a novella, this portion of the book, and it still would have taken you longer to read than Child of God or even The Road. I think it's a wonderful part of the book. It's almost comparable to Path God the Wall, which is the opening section to Don DeLille's Underworld. Brilliant short story, if you want to call it that, of a larger piece that could be read separately and be kept differently and thought of differently. This section reminded me of a thing I read about Cormac McCarthy, where him and another guy, I can't remember his name, but he was sort of like this ranger that worked on the reservations or worked on the national parks, I think in Arizona or New Mexico or something like that. And they had this conversation about smuggling wolves into Arizona or in that portion of the Southwest and releasing them into the wild, reintegrating them into the wild there. They didn't do it obviously because the guy, I can't remember his name, but he died shortly after that. But I imagine that this portion of the book here was McCarthy's way of writing about what it would be like if the wolves were back in that portion of America. There's fascinating stories about McCarthy all out there, sort of thing. I think that's one of the more interesting ones. The fact that he talked about and really contemplated smuggling wolves into that portion of America. But that's the first thing I thought of when I read this section of The Crossing. Wonderful opening to the book. I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of it. I'm hitting myself for taking this long to actually complete the full book. As I said before, I've read the novella portion 3 times now, but I've never actually finished the book, which is a failure on my part. I will finish it. But I figured that given the thematic material that's in this opening section here, it deserved the small review of its own. Wonderful stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Have you read The Crossing by Cormac McCarthy? Is it in your top 4 favourite books? It's currently on its way to being in mine. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.